And right now, the time is 9:20, and joining us live in the studio is actor, director, choreographer Richard Move, who is here from New York, and he's got a show tomorrow night at the Lensick Theater. It's based on Martha Graham, the choreographer. It's called Martha at the Lensick. And then Richard will take the show down to Albuquerque for Saturday and Sunday. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, honey.
Now, you have such an interesting background. You were born in New York. You were raised in the rural South.
Yes.
Which we were just discussing is probably why you're so creative. You had to invent your own world, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think that's probably true of a lot of artists. You know, I think the creative gene reveals itself really early in people's lives. And I think a lot of artists, whatever the medium is, maybe spend more time than other kids on their own, inventing things, making things up. And somehow, if you're lucky like I've been, you can make that transition into the quote-unquote real world. I started dancing as a teenager in Virginia, actually. My first classes were in the Graham technique. There just so happened to be a protege of a very important Graham dancer living and working in Virginia. So those were my first experiences in dance. And I was very interested in theater and in a performing arts high school situation. And then by the time I was university age, I realized I really wanted to explore this kind of world of both dance and theater. And then upon graduating college, moved to New York and started my life and work there.
Now, what inspired you to write the show about Martha Graham and to perform as Martha?
Well, I think she's just such an interesting person, honey. She's, this kind of 20th century icon. I think she's the quintessential diva. She is an egomaniacal, narcissistic, egocentric mad woman on a certain level. On another level, she's kind of this priestess and goddess, a great, great, great genius. And so her life is very, very well documented by herself and by others. So there's a lot of great material for me to cull and to create into the show in terms of the monologues. Huge body of choreographic work. Her career was from the 20s until the 90s when she died, and she was working every minute. So there's just this kind of vast library of choreography of hers to study. And then I restage sort of the epic moments for the show. And the monologue material in her life touched so many amazing people. I mean, she was dear friends with the great artists of the century, the great composers Copland and Samuel Barber, and great designers like Noguchi and Halston, and she had an audience with the Pope, and she hung out at Studio 54, and it's just an amazing long life. So there's a lot of great material for me.
I am so often asked to share the highlights of my long, 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 long career. One such culminating moment in my life came in Madrid when I performed my evening-length 3-act dance play Clytemnestra there in the great bull ring, that very arena of mortality where so many brave fighters, young, valiant, hopeful, had met their deaths. And at the final moment of the ballet, at Clytemnestra's murderous point of no return, the battle cry of the audience rang out in the night sky. Olé! Olé! Olé!
And I remember when I was about 15 seeing the Graham Company, and I didn't really understand what exactly was going on stage, but I understood it was really passionate and dramatic, and I knew it was about something mythological and something very theatrical and beautiful. And that was my first encounter with Graham, and she bowed that evening, of course, as she did the last 30 years of her life. She went on tour just to take her bow at the end of each performance. She could hardly stand up, but the men in her company would hold her up, and the curtain would part and she would bow and the audience would rise to its feet. So there was an inherent drama just in her bow.
What happens when Richard does Martha is that he's so tall, it makes her even more important and more powerful. You forget that this is a man. You really do. What you see is the power, is the bigness. And his frame on that small little stage makes you see how important Martha Graham was.
Good evening. Yes, I am the mother of contemporary dance, Time Magazine's Dancer of the Century, the first dancer ever to appear at the White House, recipient of the National Medal of Freedom, and a national treasure. In Japan,
when he performs, people learn a great deal, I think, about Martha. I think that his work is structured that way because he has to give a reference point in his performances because people don't really know, they're not initiated into the background of Martha. So part of his mission, if there is such a thing in his work, is to tell people through himself as Martha about herself.
I am so often asked how I feel about those who impersonate me. I've always said that I've enjoyed these satires over the years, from vaudevillian Fanny Bryce to one of my favorite female impersonators, Miss Danny Kaye.
When you dress up in makeup, you look so much like her. It's kind of startling. Do you feel at times like you're channeling her? Has anything odd occurred during one of the performances where you felt like you were channeling her?
Well, I channeling's such a strong word. Perhaps I do know that often in the performance I've completely forgotten about myself, and I'm completely enveloped in her and in the performance. I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about myself performing as her. I'm just sort of there. So I think that is approaching that word channeling. I don't know. I'm reluctant to say I'm channeling her, but I definitely feel a deep connection to her.
The main aspect about Richard's work that Martha would like is that it keeps her alive. It literally keeps her alive.
It's a given that she was egomaniacal and self-centered. She had to be to accomplish all that she accomplished. And she said herself that she had to choose between her art and a family, and she always chose her art. And I think she needed to do that to accomplish all that she did as a woman, as an artist, as a person, and to work that long. But she has a very kind side and a very big and generous spirit. And she's helped me many, many times.